We welcome you in the third session of the day on the management program. This session is basically to discuss the cost of poor quality and how to really, uh, you know, increase your profitability by reducing the cost of poor quality and also how can we improve the quality. So we welcome all our panelists today. And we also have our industry speaker, Mr. Hiten Beda. So let me first introduce to you our panelist. We have Mr. NC Narayan. He is the founder chairman of SSA Group of Companies. NC has more than, I believe, 3 to 4 decades of experience. He has been the corporate leader in the automobile and auto ancillary industries. NC founded SSA in 1999 with a missionary zeal to transform Indian industries to become globally competitive by transforming the way in which they think and act. He has over 2 decades of experience and excellence spread many global companies with the same intensity as India. As a CEO, coach, and mentor for leadership teams across geographies, NC has made significant contribution to hundreds of organizations and thousands of people across multiple countries spanning South Asia, Middle East, and Africa, where he has earned the reputation of a transformation catalyst. NC has authored many books on organizational platform transformation. Some of his popular books are Enigma of Lean, Lean Six Sigma in a Nutshell, and Statistical Guide for Six Sigma. Uh, we are basically, it is a pride for all of us that he is associated with us, and it is also a matter of pride that, in fact, Magro Hill Education has recently published his latest book, Pragmatic Leadership, in which he deals with a systematic approach to mastering leadership through personal leadership, team leadership, and organizational leadership. I would request all of you, encourage all of you to buy this book and read it. This will, open a lot of and addresses a lot of issues with regard to leadership. So welcome, NC, to this panel. We have Mr. Ganesh Iyer. He's the vice chairman of SSF Business Solutions. Ganesh is a graduate in chemical engineering from Mumbai University. He has over 20 years of industrial experience. For the last 10 years, he has been in business process consulting for strategy, operation, design, and development. He's also a certified project management professional. Ganesh has led a number of change management engagements using the Lean Six Sigma methodology. He has trained more than 1,000. This is very significant, actually. He trained more than 1,000 green belts around the world and coached as many breakthroughs improvement projects. Uh, Ganesh basically has been passionately involved in driving cultural change along with training, coaching, and facilitating project teams for lean transformation, systematic problem solving, business process re-engineering with a focus on automation and IT enablement in the area of CRM, ERP, project management, performance management, and leadership dashboard. So we would like to welcome Ganesh to this session. We have another very eminent international speaker, Mr. Naveen Narayan. He is the managing director of SSA International. Naveen is a mechanical engineer with an MBA in international business from the prestigious Thunderbird School of Global Management, US, where he was inducted to the Beta Gamma Sigma Honor Society for his academic excellence. He also holds a master's degree in lean enterprise from the University of Buckingham, UK. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt and Quality Improvement Associate from the American Society for Quality and is a certified EFQM assessor. He is currently pursuing his doctoral research in lean operational excellence from the University of Buckingham. Uh, Mr. Naveen Narayan leads SSA's international operation and is spearheading the company's global expansion across Middle East and Africa, where SSA is rapidly growing its footprint. He has been invited to speak at leading international forums such as IQPC, ASQ, Lean Institute of Africa, SAPI 6, CS, CPH, and CII, and is a passionate proponent of sustainable change initiatives worldwide. So, welcome, NC. We are very privileged to have you in the panel. We also have Mr. Vijay Donde. He is a CEO of SSA Business Solution Asia Pacific. Vijay is a mechanical engineer from Mumbai University with over 20 years of experience in transformation, consulting, applying strategic cost management. His work experience include corporates such as Reliance Industries and Godrej Aerospace. He has held various positions in the field of quality, right from operating with hands-on experience with leadership level. He has been passionately involved in driving cultural change along with training, coaching, and facilitating project teams for lean transformation, systematic problem solving, business process redesigning, developing fact-based management system, plant capacity assessment, greenfield plant design using lean principle. He has been one of the principal architects in designing a scientific approach for pharma development, product development using quality by design and design for experiment for regulated market such as European FDA and US. So, Vijay, we are very thankful that you have agreed to come to this panel. And finally, we our dear friend, one of my mentor, Mr. Hiten Beda. He is the past president of IPMA. He is also the chairman of APMA Environment Committee. He runs a very successful company. Mr. Beda is a chemical engineer by training and has been associated with plastics since beginning of his career. He has pursued a BS degree in chemical engineering from the University of Tennessee Department of Chemical and Polymer Engineering, USA. He continued his education at the University of Connecticut to obtain a master's degree in chemical engineering. After returning to India, he was engaged in conversion of engineering plastics and have been working on castings of polymers, polyethylenes, as well as extrusion of engineering polymers and high performance polymers. He, as I just informed, he has served the trade in the capacity in the APMA as honorary editor of Plastic News. Then he was vice president of West Zone. Then I said he was also the president, and currently he is the Environment Committee chairman. He is representing APMA on various forums with the government on advocacy on fiscal and policy matters. He is also an active member of SPE and IPI. Mr. Beda comes with immense knowledge of the industry, and I have not seen a more humble and a modest person like Mr. Beda. And we bank on him on various knowledge and wisdom and experience he brings along with him. So it is our proud privilege to have Hiten Bhai in this panel, who perhaps would be the best person on the industry to give the right perspective and right kind of inputs which is required for the industry to grow. Hiten Bhai, you're most welcome to this particular session. With this, I would request Ganesh to take this program further.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Thank you very much. Let me start by sharing the screen. So role of cost of poor quality, COPQ is cost of poor quality to drive profitability. This is the last topic in our session for today. We covered the leadership program, and then we covered the inventory management program, and then now the cost of poor quality to drive profitability. Before we get into the subject matter details of cost of poor quality, very quickly I'd like to cover introduction to about SSA to the new participants who are joined in. NC is the founder chairman. It started in 1999. He comes from an industrial background, from an automotive background, and then into electrical engineering with Crompton Greaves, and then set up SSA in 99. Deepak ji mentioned about these two books, Pragmatic Leadership, Lean Six Sigma in a Nutshell, Enigma of Lean. These are available on Amazon. Excellent books which have become textbooks in industry for driving leadership in organizations. NC also writes in various social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, where you can find a variety of his articles across variety of topics, right from spirituality to cooking to music to parenting and so on. So this is something which you can make use of the available resources which are there online. As SSA, we have serviced over the last 21 years in 24 countries, which we have done work across 1,000+ business models or industries where we have gone in and done different types of improvement projects, leading to savings of over US $400 million of savings. We are headquartered in Mumbai, regional offices in Oman, Dubai, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and we are this year expanding into the Middle East, into the Qatar and Saudi markets. SSA's primary focus is to lead profit leadership for our partnering organizations. And when we say partnering for profitability, the key focus areas which we look on is conversion cost, translating your raw material to finished good, the direct material cost in terms of the design, wherever you have a proprietary design, then the raw material which goes into the design of the material is a direct material cost. The cost of inventory, which is in terms of the raw material finished good WIP, which was the topic of our last discussion. Indirect labor cost in terms of the supply chain, procurement, planning functions. These functions contribute to the indirect labor cost. Cost of poor quality, which is the topic of discussion now, talking about defects, rework, rejections, which happens, and how a cultural improvement thought process can drive the bottom line improvements. Last but not the least is the distribution logistics cost areas, where we talk about how you are right-sized inventory for distributions. This is the glimpse of our global clientele across different regions. India, the Gulf, Southeast Asia, SAARC countries, and then other regions in Africa where we have done work. So if you look at the various transformation work packages, what we have done, primarily the way we engage with organizations is looking at vendor integration programs for ensuring the right first time quality is delivered to the organizations to ensure that there is reliable, cost-effective supply chain which happens. On the design optimization side, we look at right first-time designs and time to market new for the new products. When we look at the working capital optimization from the inventory management point of view, we talk about on-time in full deliveries which are happening. So this, along with the lean management systems, ensures that our manufacturing capabilities are up to the mark, and we have flexible manufacturing systems catering to the modern demands which are happening. Distribution network is warehousing, and where do you keep your inventories, how much should you keep, how do you ensure that you're able to deliver to your markets. And last but not the least is IT and HRM optimization tools. We are partnered with the Demand Driven Institute, who is a knowledge partner in the US, and we implement a solution on the IT side called B2Wise, which helps to implement the demand-driven MRP system. On the technology side, we help with facilitating ERP evaluation selection, production planning, scheduling, performance scorecard automation, inventory optimization, IT gap assessment. These are the areas which we facilitate on the IT enablement section. So with this, I'd like to call upon NC to set the tone for the topic of disruptive transformations of cost of poor quality. Over to you, NC.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Ganesh. Just sharing my screen, just to have a look whether it's coming up. Is it visible now? Can you see my screen, Ganesh?
Not yet, not yet. It's not yet come up. Just do one more time.
I'll share it again. Yeah, hopefully now.
Yeah, now it's coming up. Yes.
Good evening to ladies and gentlemen. This has been a great privilege for me and a pleasure talking to you today evening. And just to give a heads up for such of those, some of you might have attended our other sessions today. This is the third session we are holding today. And for the benefit of those that who have not attended the other sessions in the context of this subject that we are going to talk about, so I thought I will mention the concept of profit leadership, that which I have been talking about, essentially trying to focus on the organizational profitability that they are entitled for, and then why the profit leakages do happen, and then how we can arrest them so that we become the most profitable company, at the same time retain the customers for pretty long time. So some of the focus areas that we have discussed today is essentially the role of leadership in the organization, which is very critical for paradigm shift and then cultural change that we are looking for. So we had a session in the morning and then later on we took up the next most important topic, which is the inventory optimization. The vast majority of the organizations are struggling for working capital. So we had a session on the DDMRP, which is an upcoming science. And now today's topic, we are going to discuss about the cost of poor quality. So just to set the context of this topic, what I thought I will mention where this term COPQ is coming from. Such of those who have been introduced to this concept in the recent past, maybe a short history will be beneficial to you. So all along in the earlier days, people were not very conscious of the concept of quality. How does it affect our profitability? At the same time, the perpetuity of the organization to remain in the business for a pretty long time. I think this subject of quality has been evolving. I think in my personal view, this topic has gone through much more transformation than any other topic in the past. So starting from the pre-ISO era, where the concept of quality came in prior to 1935, which is the conformance to specification, and then subsequently the new definitions have come. Quality is the customer satisfaction, that unless the customer is satisfied, you cannot call your product has got a quality. And then Six Sigma brought a new dimension for defining the quality. And such of those who are following me in LinkedIn, I have been regularly writing many posts on bringing the subject of demystifying these subjects for the benefit of those professionals. So the first term of cost of poor quality, there are two people who have contributed to this. One is Philip Crosby. The other one is Dr. J.M. Juran, the two quality gurus. They brought this idea of saying that unless otherwise you bring in a financial perspective to quality, nobody is going to take it seriously. So Philip Crosby brought this first idea that whatever the financial losses are happening in the company, if you can quantify them in the form of financial numbers, then the whole organization will take it very seriously. So the finance controller's current accounting system, unfortunately, does not capture the cost of poor quality the way in which it has been brought about by these thought leaders. So subsequently, James Juran brought another big transformation concept, which is popularly known as Juran's trilogy. Juran's trilogy is nothing but as we have a financial planning, financial control, and financial improvement as three aspects of finance management. So he brought this idea of quality planning, quality control, and quality improvement as three important aspects, where he proposed the idea of estimating the cost of poor quality, which for your kind information, you will maybe sometimes shocked to hear that about 20 to 30% of the margin that we are losing is because of the cost of poor quality. So going forward, I thought I will throw some more light on this topic. Just a quick historical view on this. Essentially, we don't know how long the human beings were present in this planet. The prehistoric days of people who were in the Stone Age, and then subsequently they moved into 3000 BC. That they say that the various developments have taken place in the history of human being, maybe 10,000 BC onwards. There has been a continuous discovery of improving the quality of life as a whole by making it more and more comfortable gadgets and so on. So it's very important to understand the subject of quality can have a multiple perspective, which is my pet topic. So I will try and cover something as much as I can. So the invention of the wheel, of course, we don't know who invented the wheel and when it was invented. We have no idea. But nevertheless, if the wheel has not been invented, probably all those advancements in the technology would not have become possible. So this is something very interesting. And then ever since our great grandfathers in the Stone Age, they have been constantly trying to improve the quality of life, because the quality of life and the quality of anything has got an interlinkage. That's the context that on which I'm bringing these aspects. And coming to the agriculture, and I was just trying to research when this idea of agriculture really started, when my forefathers were all nomads moving around from one place to another. So at some point in time, there is a very nice story. For want of time, I'm not getting into it. So by accident, human beings have discovered that if you put a seed on the ground, it will germinate and then it will start bearing fruit. So then if for the sake of food, you don't need to start moving around from one place to another. So the quality evolution, in fact, if you really ask me, from Stone Age to agriculture has happened. And if you really look at in the 18th century, nearly about 300, 400 years ago, the major forces of nature was discovered, be it gravity in 1687, electricity in 1752, steam engine, and electromagnetism was discovered in 1820. So there are various energies of secrets of nature, you may like to probably call them, because it's very important to develop the topic of quality, because human beings are constantly in endeavor to make things better. That's the context of quality what I would like to bring about. So the almost 100 years went in discovery of nature's forces, and then later on you will find there were a lot of breakthrough transformations have happened. In the 15th century, the Gutenberg brought about the printing press in Germany. So the knowledge dissemination started happening. And then 19th century locomotive came in, which brought an end to the slavery. And industrial revolution of IC engine was a major breakthrough from Nicholas Otto from Germany in the year 1876. So you will notice that over the period of time, human beings have started creating more and more complex gadgets, which are difficult to engineer them. So that is the point I wanted to bring about. And subsequently, if you see motor car, although there are arguments that whether motor car was invented by Henry Ford or Carl Benz is always been a dispute. But the history shows that in 1885, the motor car was invented in Germany. So that is the first complex mass-producing product, where you need to bring in the fits and tolerance and produce to certain specifications, etc. So that means human beings have been put into more difficult subject of quality as these kind of gadgets started coming. So the other one is the polymer. I was just trying to find out when the first concept of polymer came. I don't know whether our senior colleague, Mr. Ethan, who has been a polymer expert, will agree. But this is what Google says in 1862. The first concept of synthetic formation of polymers have happened. Now it has become one of the largest industry in the world. And of course, 1908, actually the first aircraft by the Wilbur Wrights. And so that means they went in for a significant technological breakthrough from an automobile to an aircraft. So you will notice that an average motor car has got about 45,000 active parts, high precision active parts working together to make the vehicle to move. But an aircraft has got about 12 million active parts so that it keeps it in the air. So that means the complexity was going up over a period of time. And no one thought this internet is another major quality transformation that has happened. Tim Lee brought about this idea in 1989. And when he proposed the concept of internet for American military, American defense system was basically a very small opening or the concept of internet. Today, I think internet is not there. Probably, I don't think all of us can meet up in a platform like this and exchange our thoughts. I'm sitting in my drawing room and then speaking to you. So the point I'm trying to make is the whole idea of quality is not as simple as like a craftsman days, but it becomes more and more complex. So having said that, just to give you another interesting perspective, for making a bicycle, for example, or an auto rickshaw or a motor car or an aircraft or a spacecraft, you will find the complexity is increasing. When you say complexity, means it is easy to make a good quality bicycle, but it's not all that easy to make a good quality spacecraft which will go to the space and come back, keeping all the astronauts alive. And one small defect that is gone in the quality assurance system of Challenger has killed so many people. So it is very important to come to this context that what is the subject of quality that we are going to discuss today. Another interesting research shows that if you take a simple product like a consumer plastic, maybe I'm making a bucket or some kind of houseware product on the left hand side and the most complex aircraft in the right hand side, you will notice the average number of components going into the system is increasing. An average plastic part may have 2 components, but whereas an aircraft of the earliest model itself had about 6 million components. So, but in terms of the quality, the defect-free manufacture, very strangely, that the lesser number of parts are there in a product like consumer plastic, in Six Sigma language, if you may like to call it, it is only 1 sigma level of quality. That means 6.9 million defects are happening for a 1 million kind of a manufacturing, units. But whereas if you come to the aircrafts, which has got almost 6 million components, it is produced at 7 sigma level of quality. That means 0.019 defects per million opportunity. Now here, many a times we have a perception that, our industries are very unique and then, it is most difficult for us to make a defect-free product. Defect has got nothing to do with the complexity of the product. The defect has got something to do with the attitude of how we are looking at quality as a concept. So having said that, the quality concepts have gone through several evolutions. So I thought I will mention to you a little bit. I born in 1949 and I'm 70 years old now. When I born, it was an ambassador car and still the Britishers were there. My grandfathers were maybe working for the Britishers, and the Vespa scooter was really a great product to own. And even a second-hand scooter may require about 4 to 5 years waiting time to buy it, and then only one Indian Airlines and then steam engines and whatnot. So this is what is the era in which I born. And now today I see without iPad or smartphone or iPhone 12 and then all kind of, multiple internet banking, mobile banking and all kind of technology, and the quality and complexity of life has gone up like anything. And now we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is going to take us to locally a highly competent industry. At the same time, we become international global players. So what is going to make this distinction further, that India is moving towards the superpower, is only in the context of subject of quality. If we are not going to focus on that, obviously, I think we will remain where we are. And once upon a time, made in Japan was considered to be made in junk. People never used to even buy Japanese toys. Raj Kapoor has sung a song, the Juta Chapani, and that's the way the Japan was seen at one particular point in time. But you know what is made in Japan really means today. And 20 years ago, we looked down China. So made in China means it will be a product which will anytime will break up. But today the global economy is depending on the Chinese products at the high quality and lowest price. So moving forward, that every organization wants to increase their revenue, they want to improve their profits, and they want to bring down their operating costs, and then they want to improve their image of the organization. Now, all this will become a reality only when the visionary leadership wants to focus on the total quality of their organization. So going forward, we will throw some concepts on this subject, but nevertheless, unless otherwise the people are empowered, as well as we have a robust processes, we are not really going to make this kind of amazing kind of a recovery from our current state of economical condition. So having said that, there are two approaches what has been brought about. One is whether the customer is first or the profit first. So there may be a lot of dispute till the cow comes home. We can argue about this. But those organizations which thought profit first, they always undermine the interest of their customers. And obviously today, if you buy anything from Amazon, so obviously you go and see what is the reviews are there. And you look at the review, whether it is 4.5 stars, at least minimum, you don't want to buy that particular brand and the supplier. So although it is all happening remotely, there are organizations which are still profit first kind of. They would like to send the defective parts very intelligently, and then finally they go out of business. So it's most important to have a shift that customer first does not mean that you are going to sacrifice profit, as my colleagues will explain very soon. So in other words, the concept of total quality, as all these great gurus have said, essentially we need to improve the speed of response in our company, and then we must produce a zero defect products. Why we need to produce and how, what financial gains we have will be discussed subsequently by my other speakers. And then we need to involve all the employees in the overall game of improving the quality of organization. So I'm not going to talk about these all various gurus who have made an immense contribution to the subject of quality. In fact, the number of quality gurus came on board in the last 150 years is much more than the spiritual gurus who came on board. So as Tom Peters said, the only way you can win your competition is the thing that keeps a business ahead of the competitor is excellence in execution. Now, I think we have done enough in India and also the neighboring countries. Now the most important focus is how can we bring perfection in our execution process. So I will hand over the session to Ganesh from here. Ganesh, is that fine?
Vijay is going to take over here. Yeah, after this.
Yeah, over to you, Vijay. I'll take questions at the end of the program.
Okay, NC.
I will stop sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, is my screen is visible?
Yes, Vijay.
Okay. One minute, just. Okay. So thank you, NC. So as an extension to the thought process, what NC has expressed in terms of in terms of the quality and how the evolution has happened. But if you really look at what customer wants, customer is looking at the quality, is looking at the delivery, and he's looking at the best price. Now, there is always a thought process that the customer is something which he demands which is unwarranted demand. But in the reality, what customer want and what business is also trying to do is actually goes hand in hand. When I say that, when customer wants a good quality, as a business, as a manufacturer, we are looking at the defect-free product. When a customer says that he wants a delivery, that is on-time delivery, as a manufacturer, we are looking at how can we reduce the cycle time. Yeah. And when a customer says that he wants a better price, as a manufacturer, we are looking at the low operating cost. Now, what is important here is that how do we breach this gap? So the moment we are able to bridge this gap, that means we are meeting what customer wants in terms of all the important deliverable of my QCDS. And why this is important? If I don't meet this, my customer will move away and I will remain in the market, okay, without any customer. So it is important for me to go along with the customer to ensure that his demands are being met, be it on the quality front, be it on the delivery front, or be it on the price what we are going to offer. Now, coming to a very specific thought process in terms of cost of poor quality. What is important for us to really understand why this concept or this thought process is very critical. Now let's look at this. When we see from the profitability point of view, now we know that what we thought or entitled profit is always less than my actual profit. This is something which we have been experiencing year on year, yeah, and day by day and month on month. Now, if I have to really bridge this gap, and which is the area of concern, so what is important? I need to focus on the methodology. When I say the methodology, say again, there are multiple ways. If I have to bridge this particular gap, I spend some technology, which is about 15% is something which contribute to it. And this is not what we say, it's basically the research says. And then the 5% is coming from the management decisions or the strategic call. But if you really look at, if I have to reduce this particular gap, my methodology is going to be very, very important, which becomes a profit enhancer. Then what are the various profit drivers? Yeah, right from the material cost to the manufacturing cost, my inventory cost, what we have discussed some time back, better pricing of the particular the product, administrative cost, and the another component what we are going to discuss going ahead is the cost of poor quality. That means each of this component has got the significant impact on my profitability. Let's understand what does it mean. Now we were talking about the planned profit and we are talking about the realized profit. Now, why there is a gap between this planned and the realized profit? Because these are the various components which are becoming part of the profit leakages, be it my material cost, be it my direct indirect material cost, or the direct indirect labors and my utility expenses, my maintenance, my spares, and so many other operating component costs. Now, what is important here? How do we first of all identify these things? Yeah, and how do we basically erase those leakages so that the planned profit is in the realized profit, there is no gap as far as the expectations are concerned and the reality is concerned. Very interestingly, the relationship between the quality and the profit. Like traditionally, we know that these are my like a process 1 and the process 2. Now, if the component or my raw material goes to the operation 1, if it is okay, then it goes to the operation 2. If it is not okay, then it goes to the rework. And then again, it goes back to the operation and the cycle continues. Now, many times we don't realize this. The moment there is a problem in terms of the quality or it is not meeting the specification, and we start spending a time on this reworking. The first and the foremost, when we do this, ensuring that the rework process or the people who are going to use for the rework has to be highly skilled, so that the component which is not meeting specification, if I have to brought to the original condition, it takes the additional efforts and the time. And this is called as a hidden factory. We never realize this, that how this hidden factory is having an impact on my overall the profitability. What we were discussing earlier, what was my planned profit and what is the realized profit. Very interestingly, if you look at, if this is what is the total cost of my product, yeah, total sales price of my product, yeah. So within that, I have got two components. One is the cost of the manufacturing of that particular part, and the rest should be my ideally the profit. But in the reality, I don't get this entire component as a profit because of my this hidden factory. And this hidden factory is nothing but the cost of a poor quality is nothing but a cost associated to do that rework, cost associated to do anything which is the yeah, it is not right first time. And this component is nothing but your cost of poor quality. Now, if I have to really improve this profitability or profit margin, the very important thing for me is to reduce the cost of poor quality. That means even if my top line doesn't increases, but still I can improve my profitability by minimizing this cost of poor quality component, which is coming out of my hidden factory and of the various component. Now, why this is important? Because if I really look at my total cost, yeah, now the total cost is a component of my various failures, be it the internal, external, the prevention, and the various appraisal. Okay. Now, if I have to reduce the total cost, it is important for me to do a constant improvement in the processes, in the product, in the anything which is helping me to convert my raw material into the finished good, which is a sellable one. And hence the cost of poor quality becomes very, very critical for me. And that is how I'll be able to really bring down my total cost by reducing these various failures. Now, what are those various failures if I have to really see? Now, anything which is very traditional, which is visible, yeah, are like your inspection, cost of inspection, cost of rejection, cost of rework, the warranty cost, and so on and so forth. But this particular cost, if you really look at, this is only a tip of the iceberg, which is being seen by us. But what is not being seen, which is absolutely hidden, there are many such the activities or component where my cost of poor quality is associated. This can be a long cycle time, maybe a setup time, my the expediting cost, my excess material planning, then the lost sales, unsafe workplace, and many more such things. Unfortunately, what happens? We start working only on the things which are visible to us. And that is where, again, I'm taking you back. The difference between what was the planned profit and what is the realized profit, because each of this component is going to have a severe impact on my net profitability. At the end of the year or the end of the project or at the end of the particular product or a month, when I say that I thought it is going to be a 20% profit, but I could see only 5% profit, where that 15% profit has gone. This 15% profit is something like here. And this is what we are saying. Cost of poor quality is nothing but cost of not doing the things right first time. This can be anything. Buying the right material at the right time, by producing the right component at the right time. All these are various components when I say as a cost of poor quality. Now, if you really see this X and Y axis, the cost associated and the percentage of defect. Now, if you really see it goes from the absolutely the non-quality product to the perfect quality product is nothing but from the product having the highest defect to the product having the zero defect. Now, as the failure or as the quality keeps improving on my x-axis, from my certain percentage of defect to zero defect, what happens? The cost of failure keeps on reducing. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind, if I have to get into the zero defect, obviously, I'll have to do something different. That is where the cost of prevention will come. Yeah. So what I need here, how can I have that optimum quality level? Okay. Where I get the optimum quality, where the cost of failure as well as the cost of prevention, yeah, is being having the right balance. And this is something which is important in terms of the managing the cost of poor quality or reducing the cost of poor quality. Now we have understood how the quality has been evolved. We have understood what is the cost of poor quality. We have seen that what are the various components of this cost of poor quality. Now the next question comes, if I have to really improve, what are the various tools and techniques? There are many. Okay, let's discuss a few tools and techniques, because it is very important for all of us to really understand. It's very easy to say that, what are the problems, okay, and which are visible, which are invisible. But the next question comes, can you tell me how this can be resolved? This is where the various tools and techniques are coming to the picture. Yeah, as the Sun Tzu says, he has beautifully expressed, a strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and the tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. That means, now when we are saying the cost of poor quality, I want to reduce the cost of poor quality as a strategy. Yeah, but if I don't have any mechanism, if I don't have any methodology, okay, to bring down this cost of poor quality, it is not going to really help. And this is where there are a couple of the tools and technique like Lean and Six Sigma, came into the picture, so that this is going to help the people to talk about how to minimize the COPQ or cost of poor quality. What is important for us? It is important for us to enhance the skill set of the people in terms of those various tools and technique. Provide a simple tools, simple the mechanism, simple methodology. Let's not frighten the people while working on the cost of poor quality. We have to provide something which will be easily understood. Yeah, it is important for us to challenging the status quo. What does that mean? Now today, for example, now I say that in the last year, the cost of poor quality or rejection or the rework was about 10%. Yeah, and I'm just bringing down from 10% to 8%. Is it really good enough? I may get the notional feeling that from 10% to the 8% I have come down by 2%. But there is a possibility, in the industry or the similar industry, or maybe some other people in the benchmark industry, they might have even come to 1%, 2%. So what is important for me? Let me challenge what is the current scenario. I should not get satisfied with the current scenario. That is something we are going to talk about, the challenging the status quo. Most important, while having this tools application, empowering the team to drive the change. Now this empowerment happen through the teamwork. Empowerment happen through the constant trading. The empowerment happen through providing the tools and technique. Empowering happens allowing them to challenge the status quo. Yeah, and that is how you will try to drive yourself in terms of the operational excellence journey. So what is needed for you to have this improvement mechanism? If I have to really put into the kind of the 4-step approach, what is important here? I need to really understand, okay, what are the current challenges I'm looking at it? What are the various problems I'm trying to resolve? Okay, understand what is the current situation. Do I really know what is the current situation? Do I really know where there is a gap in the current situation? Okay, do I really know do I have the adequate knowledge to basically understand and the adequately take some kind of the actions on that in terms of my knowledge and know-how? I need to understand that. I need to basically target, okay, where I need to move from my current level or from the status quo to the next level. Yeah, what kind of the obstacles I will have to overcome during this. It is important for us to understand what kind of the change management I'll have to undergo and I'll have to go through that. Yeah, and then apply the different tools and technique, be carrying out certain experimentation, apply the PDCA, ask this YY analysis and whatnot. So it is important for me to basically focus on the different dimensions. Again, going back to the strategy and the tools and technique. So while driving any kind of while using any tools and technique, be it a Lean or Six Sigma, what is important for us? You will have to have a certain business theme. Now, when I'm saying the theme is something which is going to it should become a way of life for the organization. To give certain examples, like DHL, when they wanted to embark on this journey of improvement, they said, be the customer's first choice. So that means anything and everything I do, I should become the first choice to the customer. In all the touch points at the customer interfaces, I should do, my processes should be capable, my people should be capable, so that I give that kind of the wow experience to my customers, so that I become a first choice. So you're creating that theme. Like Pfizer, they said, right first time. Now that becomes a theme. That means, be it my manufacturing process, be it my inspection process, or be it my logistic process, or be it my procurement process, I must have the right first time. So once I bring this kind of the various themes, and that is how the successful companies, they have used these themes. Now these themes become the way of life. So what happened? It is the easiest way to communicate the intention of the organization towards the improvement. And then people will start basically, understanding and start relating with themselves. And they start connecting the dot OS. Why I'm applying this methodology? Because I have to ensure that everything is right first time. Why I have to apply this methodology? Because I have to become a first choice to the customer. Yeah. Why I have to do this? Because I have to ensure that I will conserve the resources by eliminating the wasteful activities. So that is how we need to understand and we need to select and apply that thing. Now, while working on the project, I may have a different kind of the project. One can be the external project, which is coming from the customer complaint or customer expectation. That's what we call as a voice of customer, what the customer wants. So we try and understand the customer expectation, and accordingly, we try and understand what are those critical component or critical the actions I must take to meet the customer's demand. For example, here, it's very simple example. If you go to bank and if you want to open your account, the customer expect my account opening should happen within 1 day. Now, once I have this expectation from the customer, I will go and ask, okay, what is that is going to be a important metric. If I worked upon that, that will meet the customer, the demand or voice of customer. And then you identify what are those various the defect opportunities, or what are the different things which are going wrong in my process, be it into the delay, be it into the spelling mistake, which are measurable and which are basically controllable, so that you start working on that. This becomes from the external direction. Now, how do I identify the improvement project internally? This comes from the business issue, which will be like at the leadership level, the brainstorming will be done. Pain areas have been identified. Then which processes are the creating issues, which processes are a bottleneck. So we identify those, identify again the various defects, and then convert those into the various projects. So these are the different ways and means to identify a project which are external in nature, a project which are internal in nature. So what Six Sigma says, yeah, you will have a tool sets. Yeah, various tool sets, statistical tools, your FMEA, and then your the YY analysis, and then the statistical analysis is a part of it and whatnot. So you have a tool sets. But what is important here? You have to have this specific mindset and the philosophy with you that zero defect is possible. And then what is important? You have to bring the methodology. So with this, the philosophy of zero defect and the methodology of DMAC and the tool set, it is important to have the proper engagement between all of them. There has to be proper alignment. My philosophy should connect. My philosophy should talk about the zero defect. My methodology should complement to achieve that. And for me to have this methodology, there has to be different tools and techniques. So this is how the Six Sigma journey, which is called a DMAC journey. What does that mean? You define the problem, okay, very precisely, because defining the problem itself is a big issue. So define the problem, measure what is the gravity of the problem, okay, use different kind of the tools and techniques, graphical analysis, then analyze what are the various root causes, what are the various reasons because of which the current performance is not meeting the specification or expectation. You do that root cause analysis, yeah, and then find out the various reasons to fix those root cause. Create the implementation plan. Do some kind of the piloting. It may not be feasible for you to do the implementation and go. You can do that piloting, and then bring that control mechanism so that you sustain that improvement. That is what this DMAC journey or the Six Sigma journey is all about. Very interestingly, the another methodology which we talk about, the lean. Lean is nothing but you are trying to basically eliminate the wastage, wasteful activities from the systems. But if you really look at this, it's very, very interesting. Yeah. Without understanding what lean is all about, okay, people try to basically misinterpret and then they start getting to the execution. So leadership team says that, okay, go and adopt the lean practices. Yeah. The people without understanding, like the example. Now, currently they were, serving the pizzas and the soda. They said, if I have to become a lean, that means, bring down the size of that pizza and then provide them the carrots instead of soda, provide them the water. That's not lean is all about. Okay. So first of all, understanding the basic, the fundamental, what the lean is all about is very, very important for us to know. let's see from where this entire the thought process came. We know that in the Second World War, as far as the Japan is concerned, the almost 25% of the national wealth was being lost, and they had the shortage of resources, the material, the transport, and they were competing with America. Of course, the America is something which was having the huge competition with them. Their productivity was multifold. What the Japanese leadership and the thought leaders, they felt, now if we have to really compete with the Americans, we'll have to use a different thought process. So that is where they felt it is important for us to understand the customer angle, and keeping the customer angle. Okay, what customer wants, let's provide what is their need instead of providing what he doesn't want. So that is where the thought process came. Provide what customer want. Don't try to create the fats into system. Eliminates unwanted things, because that is where you will try to bring the cost of operation down. You will try to bring the cost of material down, and so and so. This is where the journey started. Having said that, the initial journey which started in the food, where the earlier mechanism of the gypsy production system. What does that mean? So that means, while building the car, yeah, the operators were moving from one station to another station while building the car. The car was stationary, okay, and that is how people were moving from the one car to another car while building this. Then while having this entire thought process, and in a process, the efficiency of the people was going down. And that's where Henry Ford, he felt, no, I think we'll have to do something different. So what he felt, it is important for us to keep the people stationary and let the gadget or let the car keep moving from one station to another. And that is how the concept of the pool system came into the picture. Now, when we talk about this entire the lean, what does that mean? Eliminate the wasteful activities. What those wasteful activities? Yeah. First of all, understand. When you say the value, what does that mean? Now, there are three aspects of the activities what we perform. Yeah. One is that activity which is a pure waste. What does that mean? Whatever you perform, it doesn't add any value from the customer. Your customer is not ready to pay for anything what you are doing. For example, if you are doing a river, customer is immaterial whether you are doing it right first time or you are doing the river. The cost of river is something which you'll have to want. You can't pass it on the customer. Customer is not going to pay. Value added is something where customer is ready to pay. Value added is something where you are transforming one form into another, raw material into the finished good, but right first time. And there could be certain activities, business value add. Of course, here the customer may not ready to pay, but of course these are the business essential. Or there could be certain activities which may be important for me to perform the value add activities, or my compliance, or my regulatory. Those are certain things which is important. But when we say pure waste, how do I define the pure waste? So this is coming something which is right from if I do the overproduction, my excess inventory, the defect issues, excess movement of the people, then there is excessive transportation, inappropriate processing, that means over processing, unused creativity in terms of not having the right person in the right place, and the waiting, obviously. So these are the different ways I can look into the process, and I can identify whether this is really adding a value or this is wasteful activities. Just like a 40,000 feet overview in terms of understanding the wastage. Now, when we do this, it is important for us to create the velocity across the entire value stream. Yeah, in terms of my information to the material flow, when I'm saying the information flow, this is something I get the requirement from a customer. That is, my marketing takes the information, goes to your design, then you have got your planning, then you have got your procurement. This is my information flow. That means here there's no physical movement of my material. Only what is happening, my information is moving either in terms of the purchase order, okay, either in terms of my sales order, either in terms of the purchase order on my supplier, and so on. But the second part is the material flow, where once the raw material comes from my supplier, or it is being issued from my warehouse, then I start converting that into the physical, the transformation of material into the finished good. What is important for us when we are trying to eliminate the waste it is important for me to identify what are those wasteful activity in the information as well as a material flow. It is not merely a manufacturing process which creates the wasteful activities. It is information as well, because that is how my entire the velocity is getting impacted. So if I have to reduce the lead time of my this entire stuff, it is important for me to see what are all those things I'm not doing right, or that non-value added activities across information and material. So with this, I would hand over to Ganesh. Yeah, what are the typical transformation challenges one will experience, and we must have the strategy for that. So over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you, Vijay. Screen is visible, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for setting the context and giving background about Lean and Six Sigma and how different organizations have taken these continuous improvement themes. I will not call them methods, also they are called themes now, to drive the improvement within the organizations. Now, when we look at it, NC talked about it in his earlier lecture. On an average, when we see average industry, every industry has a plan for certain improvements. And this is what is shown in the dotted line. But as we do that, what we fail to recognize is, the world-class benchmark or the benchmark companies also are doing continuous improvement. They are not where they are. They are bringing in new technology. They are doing new things, setting up new standards, and they are also improving. So in this approach, what happens is when you're continuously doing small incremental improvements, you tend to remain still as a follower and not to become a leader. So this whole aspect of doing a breakthrough improvement, which we are talking about, is what these methodologies try and drive in the culture of the organizations. Is how can you help to drive breakthrough improvement, which helps you to take that leapfrog over and at least get closer, if not cross over, at least get closer to the world-class benchmark. Now, in this transformation approach, which we talk about, if you can look at the main aspects, the main things which we look at within the levers of transformation are customer service, delivery lead time, inventory turns, manpower productivity, the quality and cost. With these primary levers which we talk about, these become the engines on which we will drive all the transformation from the current performance level, first to get to a market leader kind of a position, and then from then on to challenge the benchmark performance and then take it up. Now, we have called it as lean projects, but does not mean that all projects are going to be lean. Now, lean, as we know, as Vijay explained, it's an overarching umbrella of things of how to do organization improvement. So within lean itself, you have machine maintenance, you have quality improvement, you have TPM, you have so many tools and techniques. So I think also the context, in the Indian context specifically, when we say lean, people think that doing a value stream mapping or trying to reduce lead time or doing a 5S is lean. So there is a lot of misconception of what really lean is. And hence that book which NC has written, Enigma of Lean, is meant to demystify all these thinking which is there in terms of what really encompasses a lean project. So that is something which happens. So world-class quality comes across when you look at it across the organization, be it manufacturing, be it your support function, be it your frontline or back-end processes. You need world-class service and quality at every aspect of your organization. The next aspect which we look at is trying to look at the cost focus and with the benchmark. So when we do the benchmarks, what we see, and this is from the Toyota manufacturing in UK, where they did the benchmark, and this was benchmarked against other Toyota manufacturing companies across the globe. So trying to find out how are the UK performance versus the benchmark performances in other countries. Now you can see that you identify that which are the areas where they are doing worse than actual. So if you can see that their raw material costs are higher, their direct labor is more, indirect labor is more, and then consumables is kind of same. And then again, when you look at your dark orange, which is your maintenance, is fairly higher, much higher. So very quickly you're able to identify the gaps between the gaps between where the benchmark is and where it is. And we can also prioritize, saying that what is it that we want to really focus on immediately, what is the second area, by looking at the benefits which it is to give and the effort required to implement it. So when you take the structured approach of identifying problem areas and then going and fixing it, as Vijay was mentioning, is you define the problem and very well, and then get into solving a problem that makes better sense. So just few examples of what we have done as part of our projects across the globe. And when we say these quality improvement, how it helps to bring about the bottom line improvements is what we want to share. Usually we feel that quality improvement is only about improving quality, not necessarily. It is also about savings, right? How you can save cost, like typical things like this was for a cable manufacturing company where we looked at the quality and kind of the wraps which they were using to cover the cables, and come up with new drum wrappers which were significantly much better, cheaper, and giving the same kind of result. You looked at the design point of view, how many rods, tie rods are used, what is the functionality, and can we try and reduce that? Again, that was something. Looked at the paints which were being utilized, what is the functionality of that, and how can we improvise or look at it for certain kind of products which are going to certain kind of areas where it may not be required. So, simple things, when you put under the microscope, you start looking at it, you're looking at $500,000 saving annually. Now, this is all lying right in front of your eyes. It's up to us to start looking at it, taking the initiative and trying to do it. Another example from a Oman Post organization, where we looked at stationery costs, because being a postal organization, forms and applications and covers and the cartons and other things, everything is there, has to be there in every post office across. So how do you go about saying that what should be the average stock which is there, and how much should you keep, and how we can reduce that whole thing? When we go in a structured approach of problem solving, identifying, and then doing it, again, you see here, you're looking at approximately 20,000 Omani Riyal, roughly about 200 INR, we can say. You can see the amount of saving which comes about by when you bring in about a structure, you bring in a focus, a leadership management team to oversee, give decisions, take proactive action, and then go about doing it. It cannot just happen by a bottom line. It just cannot happen with a top line decision. It has to be an organization-wide drive to do this. So some of the best practices which are there, this is one of the other areas where SSA preaches and practices the EFQM excellence model. And like EFQM is one of the excellence models. There are many more which we use depending on what the organization wants to achieve. You could use a Malcolm Baldrige excellence model, or you could use the Shigo Shingo excellence model, which tries to drive the cultural changes in the organization. Now, what these excellence models primarily drive is how to bring about a whole organization-wide transformation. So when you look at these models, three things which come out is, one, at a leadership level, how you are setting your purpose, vision, strategies. How does the leadership drive this across the organization? So what is the kind of direction which is being given to the organization? This is one part of the assessment. The other part of the assessment and improvement which we try to do is, how do you execute on this particular direction which is given by leadership? So it talks about how do you engage stakeholders, how do you create the value stream and sustain and create improvement values, how do you drive performance and transformation projects within the organization. This is all about driving the execution which is given for the direction which is set. Now, having done this, it should result into improvement into the stakeholder perception, customer perception, employee perceptions. These have to improve when you take about a transformation journey, right? So you look at that in terms of how satisfaction levels, employee satisfaction levels, you look at these, and you also look at the KPIs at a strategic and operational level in terms of your strategic results. So you cannot expect excellence to happen by chance. Are you able to design it and execute and gain the result? That becomes the goal of these excellence models. Is are you designing for excellence, or are you leaving it for chance by excellence? This becomes a way. And as you keep applying it, it is not a first time right approach. It is a continual improvement process. Even in this whole thing is, as you get the results, you will realize that certain strategies worked, some strategies failed. What is it? Why is it? Take that learning and put it as part of the learning of our strategies, put it back in, and then keep going ahead. So this is a continuous process. It keeps building, and then you get higher and higher in terms of how you execute. Now, as we do these transformation projects, and time and again, we have seen this in organizations, it is not the technical stuff which is the problem. Doing the DMAIC project is not the problem, or understanding Six Sigma is not the problem. The real problem is the mindset of the people, right? As they say, the softer aspect is always the harder aspect to change. The harder things which are difficult are always easier. So if you look at this change management aspect, what is being shown here, we have a current state of performance at which we are. And then we are saying that we are going to bring about a change, right? Now, when this announcement is being done, you will find that there would be a shake-up in the organization. There will be some people who feel that, why this change? Why now? Are we being targeted? Are we going to be downsized? What is going to happen? There would be a sense of stability which comes lower because of this change announcement. Now, having seen that, what happens is there is always a small group of innovators and positive people who are there, who try to bring it up and talk about the benefits of this, how it is going to impact the organization. This part happens initially. But typically what happens is, as the progress in the projects happen, if there is inadequate communication, if there is inadequate leadership involvement, if there is inadequate project management plan and buy-in from the senior management, what happens is this gets into a negative cycle of people trying to show why this will not work for them, right? So in that, what would happen is complaints, anger, and then get into a complete breakdown, and things don't generally improve. But if this is there, good communication and other things are there, what generally happens is this new identity takes shape, and then you start working in terms of a higher level of stability. So as they say, this change part is a constant if we keep it. If we bring about a higher level of acceptance with all the stakeholders and the team members in the organization through communication and other means, then your effectiveness can be almost doubled in that sense. With a small input here, your effectiveness can be largely improved. That is one of the key messages which we want to do and drive as we drive communication for transformation projects. It all starts with the attitude. So, this is the ABCD philosophy which NC says. It starts with the attitude that everything is possible, I can do it. That's the starting point. The second is the belief, right? A belief, it's like a religion, right? So if you think that it can be done and you believe it, then only you will follow the steps required. You will do all the aspects in terms of following certain steps of the DMAIC, or doing the lean Kanban and doing the Gemba walks and other things which are required. So if you don't have the belief in place, the commitment won't happen. So commitment comes up only if there is a belief. So belief is the starting point, and then you drive the commitment of the people in the organization, which later on then, unless if they are dedicated, then it is sustained and takes it on to a longer duration. So from a change management aspect, creating belief, creating the right attitude and mindset of the people, these two become essential. These are something which are inbuilt in the organization in terms of the values of the organization. So these are generally there. So when you go down the line from the manager level down, you'll find that people are dedicated, people are committed, and will generally follow instructions what are given. It's like creating the right belief and attitude across the organization, which is more challenging. So as entrepreneurs and owners of organization, you have very less choice with all the changes which is happening. You have to catch the tiger's tail when you are going to embark on a transformation journey, and then the transformation engine takes you along. So the boardroom level, when you're looking at it, you are required to set the direction, provide guidance, remove roadblocks. That becomes your key role as part of the role within the transformation journey. The middle level people are most important for doing the communication, getting the buy-in of the people, coordinating and converting the money language and the doing language. So down the line, people don't understand the money language, they understand the thing language or what to do language. So the middle management is completely responsible for bridging that gap, and the execution is going to become their key responsibility to ensure that the buy-in of the people happens. And the last lever which we are talking about is the performance culture. This is more or less is a result of implementing the vision and thing through systems and policies. So culture, finally, if you say, it's culture is something like very hard to define. It's like saying what is love or what is beauty. Within the eyes of the beholder, they say beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Similarly, culture is something very, very tacit, very, very hard to define and create. So your policies, your people and process finally define the culture of the organization. So if the policies are well implemented through your processes, and the process also requires the management by the people, then is when the culture is going to be visible. So as we go into the transformation journey, we have 3 work packages for creating world-class enterprises. One talks about strategic excellence, which talks about the leadership level. Second is operational excellence, which talks about how do you improve the quality, cost, and delivery items. And then the digital excellence, because we today are in the 21st century and looking at trying to do Industry 4.0 or doing other things. So unless you bring in this digital excellence, we are going to be left behind. So the CEO's commitment in terms of commitment is, they say that you have to lead by example, you have to walk the talk. So the constancy of purpose for improving products and services, this is something which is going to be driven from the founder, from the leadership, managing directors. They need to drive the change as they speak about it. So they have to bring about changes into their own work habits, into their own ways of thinking, bring about new ways of doing things. So unless the people see that, the belief and attitudes will not change. Second most important thing is driving through education. And this we can see, through the Japanese means, they have spent so much time and effort into ensuring that all the people are educated. And this is something where I think a lot of industries in India are lacking. We have to institute a rigorous program for educating and self-improvement for everyone. This is not something which, unfortunately, nobody teaches. This subject is not there in engineering. It is not there in any of the normal education courses. It is not there, how do you look and improve a process? So unfortunately, none of the management techniques also focus on this as a transformation approach. So it comes up to driving, to educate the people, to skill build the people. This is something which is totally required in terms of driving the transformation programs. Last but not the least, ensuring alignment. Like, if you really see the difference between a world-class organization and average organization, all are doing an adequate job, but in different directions, versus here everybody is aligned to the common vision, purpose, and working towards that. So leaders, middle management, and frontline individuals understand what they should be doing to reach and remain at a particular level of performance, right? That drives the most important alignment of people. So you have, we talked about the automation and the digital excellence. So we need to start monitoring, measuring what is important to the organization, have dashboards on this in terms of getting real time or weekly, daily reports in terms of what is happening so that you can take quick actions, quick decisions. Your decision making is not delayed. You integrate this performance management system with your HR so that you are able to recognize, reprimand the efforts and what is going right and wrong. How do you bring about drive, reward, and recognition? All of that comes with this whole package of integrating with HRM. And when you look at the structure for harmonizing it across the organization, where an organization creates the themes and objectives, and at the bottom you need process management system, because you want to manage through process, not through people. You want to go away from a people management system to a process management system, wherein you bring in process alignment with strategy, people to align with strategy in terms of driving through policies, the scorecards to measure the progress, how you're measuring it, and you take up the projects or initiatives which are aligned with the strategies so that there is complete alignment for a given time frame. So these things are something which is done on an annual basis, on a 2-3 year basis, where we have certain targets, achieve it, again go redesign what next, and that is how you drive continuous improvement transformation projects. With that, I'd like to call Naveen on board to share his perspective of driving continuous improvement in Oman in a couple of projects which he has led. Over to you, Naveen, now.
So just picking the thread from Ganesh, where Ganesh left, I'm audible?
Yes, Naveen, you're audible and screen is visible.
So I'll just deep dive in one of the case studies. This was in the label defects in one of the FMCG companies. They make vegetable oils here in Oman. So the methodology is we followed the DMAIC methodology. DMAIC draws from the Six Sigma tool set used in Motorola, GE, and other firms that pioneered it. So this is a methodical approach by which it helps to bring focus on the issue and to pinpoint on the specific problems. So here the issue was, of course, the label rejection was the main issue, where they were facing a significant line stoppage. Although, as you know, label is not a very high cost item in the scheme of things. But because the label on the line rejection is a headache for manufacturing, it causes interruption to the line. And there's a lot of lost production hours because of that. So the real loss is not in terms of value of label loss, but actually in terms of the revenue loss due to the productive hours, which was very significant. And it was a pain area. And they were really struggling to figure out what was causing that issue. So when they deep dive into the data, one of the things that revealed was that there is a lot of instability in the process. There are some instances where they have very high rejection, 3.5%, and low rejection also. So average about 0.67% rejection on the line. So this was amounting to a lot of lost hours of production. So when they've started to investigate the reasons or the types of, initially the types of the rejection on the line, typically this is after the label is being bonded on the high-speed line and the oil filling line, basically in the bottles. So a lot of symptoms like label is open or label is upside down and so on. So label open means that the bonding or the adherence is not strong enough. So this was the real issue, that there is something to do with the process in which the pressure is applied, the glue is applied. And this also has an element of the quality that the suppliers are adhering to, or the quality standards they are adhering to. So it is a complex issue because it's not just a manufacturing issue. It is also an issue to do with the quality performance of the supplier, so incoming quality controls. So in the analysis phase, they went through a lot of deep dive in terms of what are the various issues. Typically we call them as 6 M's: men, machine, material, method, mother nature, and so on. So This helps to, again, deep dive into a number of variables or factors that are potentially contributing to the defect. So they came up with a bunch of issues, but these are kind of issues where the team usually, in this context, the manufacturing team is highly knowledgeable about the process, and they have tried a number of things and failed in the past to fix this issue. So they have to. The trick really is to keep their bias aside and to independently validate each and every potential cause. An ideal approach to root cause analysis is when you're not biased by your opinion and you simply go by the facts. So they came up with a number of interesting potential root causes. Now, one of the things that stood out was in terms of the, in terms of the surface smoothness or roughness of the label that the vendors are supplying. So they found that they experimented between two vendors. One of them was very consistent in terms of the roughness of the label surface. Another one was very inconsistent. So, and how does that affect the label adherence? Is because if the surface is too smooth, then of course you can imagine that the glue doesn't adhere, right? So the even if you apply the pressure and heat, the label doesn't stick because the surface is too smooth, so it doesn't catch the glue. So this was a very significant root cause they figured out, and they found that there is no specification in their incoming quality manual, incoming quality control records to control the surface roughness of the incoming labels. So immediately they spoke to their suppliers, and suppliers were also not very sure about the contribution of the surface thickness or surface roughness on the label performance on the line. So immediately they arrested these kind of issues. They also introduced some testing methods by which they could consistently assess the incoming quality and reject it right there before they put it on the line. So this helped them to again pick up, come up with a lot of very specific action. The beauty here is that a lot of times we are misled by the notion that the only way you can solve manufacturing problems is by investing in capex. Either change the machine, bring better quality machine, better quality molds, and so on. That may partially address the issue, but there are 5 other M's other than machinery, right? There is people, there is method, there is measurement, there is environmental factors, and so on. So, and if you ignore the other 5 M's and you only focus on one M, which is the machine, you may end up either not getting value on the investment or only partially solving the issue, and maybe more frustrated that despite investment, the issue didn't get resolved. But the tendency is to jump into solution. We don't have the patience to investigate because it's a lot of hard work. You need to collect data. You need to be disciplined about the process and investigate, like how a detective goes about investigating a crime. So that's the beauty of the process. So then they came up with the solutions were rolled out, and there were a lot of significant financial gains to the organization across different categories, which was directly in terms of added capacity on production and also reduced rejection on the line and so on. So this was a good case example related to the industry. Ganesh, would you like to take over the other example?
Yeah, Vijay will be taking over this last example. Vijay?
Okay. So let me share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
The screen is visible?
Yes, Vijay.
Okay, so one more case study in terms of how the Lean and Six Sigma as a methodology, as an approach that was applied to again arrest the cost of poor quality. And when I say the cost of poor quality, there are different metrics which we are going to discuss. This was primarily into the flexible packaging. See, as a management, they wanted to focus on 2 things. One, they wanted to improve the on-time and in full delivery and improve the productivity as far as the operators are concerned. So for me to improve this on-time and in full delivery, obviously I'll have to reduce the late time. I have to ensure that machine downtime goes down, has been reduced, and of course the various wastages which are being generated, during this entire packaging process. These were the various KPIs in terms of the lead time, in terms of the changeover and the wastage reduction and the productivity per person, which has been discussed, identified and agreed. Because many times if the KPIs are not very clear and people have misunderstood the KPI, the definition itself, then again it becomes difficult for us, for the team when they are going to execute, improve and see the subsequent changes. So again, why I'm emphasizing on this, because we are talking about the structured approach to ensure that we are working on the cost of poor quality. So defining the KPI itself is a part of the structured approach. So what has been done as a DMAC framework, what Naveen has explained some time back. So we have created the charter. Now, obviously, when you are talking about the charter, you are trying to give the thought process why this particular project is important. Yeah. What are the boundaries of the projects in terms of the INSPOC? What are the things which we are not going to see or which we are not going to look during this entire improvement, so that the project team has got a complete clarity, so they are not getting lost. And then what are the various KPIs? So this KPIs which I discussed some time back is in the lead time, the wastages in terms of the percentage. Those are the, of course, they have got a cut form and the roll form as far as the packaging is concerned. So they wanted to reduce this, the wastages with the various level of MOQs. Yeah, like they had this MOQ of 1,000 and above, then the 300 to 1,000 and so on. And this was the current level of the wastage, which they wanted to bring it down, yeah, to 9% and the 12% and so and so, from the current level of 14 to 22%. So with respect to each of this, the KPIs, we could see that we have identified the various Kaizen project. That means the individual improvement projects. So what I'll do, I'll walk you through in one particular such a Kaizen project where they were focusing on the wastage reduction. So this wastage reduction is primarily, yeah, coming from the a different MOQ level, which I was talking to some time back. Yeah, and what was the objective? It is going to basically cut down the cost of manufacturing. It is going to reduce my manufacturing lead time, and obviously it is going to give me a competitive advantage in terms of the S&M operations, and it will help to improve the productivity per person. So when the team has done the brainstorming, and when we do this brainstorming, obviously it is important for us to, like the Japanese principle, go to Gemba. That means you have to be on the floor. You have to be there on the place where the problems arises, rather than sitting in the conference room and doing the analysis and paralysis. So that's where using that 6M approach, what Naveen has briefed some time back. So what we could see, high setup waste, and then the shade matching the wastage. These were the two major wastages were found, which were contributing in terms of that higher percentage of 14 to 22% of the wastages with the different kind of the MOQs. The team has done the detailed brainstorming, identifying the various root causes in terms of the process parameters, in terms of the startup procedures, in terms of the using the correct film size and whatnot. And what we could identify in terms of what are the various defects in terms of the lines, in terms of the scums and the spots and the dents, because of which a lot of rejections were happening. And obviously that is how it was contributing in terms of the percentage wastage. So those brainstorming was done with the team, and then the various solutions were identified. Of course, I will not get into the details of each of the solutions, but we are trying to bring the approach, which is important in terms of the methodology. So you are identifying the various solutions, potential solutions, which is possible for us to go and implement. Yeah, and post that implementation, you can see that for the MOQ above 1,000, yeah, our baseline was 14%, yeah, and from 14% it has come down to 4.67%. So almost 70% wastage reduction has happened with the MOQ about 1,000. If I look at the MOQ, between 0 to 100, yeah, so you could see that the wastage has brought down from 52% to 22% and consistently. So almost 60% is the wastage reduction has happened with that. So what we are trying to basically say and they communicate as a part of the cost of poor quality. Now, all these are certain things which are again impacting your bottom line. Again, all this is something which is impacting your the targeted profit and what was the realized profit. So this is how you can identify various themes. You can identify the various initiatives or the projects in terms of whether it is a time base, it is a flow base, it is the variation base, or it is basically the specific, the wastage base, and so and so. And apply the right tools and technique. Yeah. So that this is how it is going to help the people to really improve the process in the structured approach. So what is important here is whatever the methodology we are applying, okay, it is important for you to have the thinking process, apply the simplistic way to resolve the issues rather than making it more complex. Yeah. So that is something which I thought will share with you, and I'm done with this case study presentation.
Thank you, Vijay. Deepak ji, now we can call upon Hiten ji to share certain experiences.
So thank you, Ganesh. Nice of you. It was excellent presentation. So may I request our Mr. Hiten Beda to give his industry perspective on the presentation which has been just made by the panelists.
Thank you very much, Deepak ji. Good afternoon, friends. At the outset, I would like to re-emphasize what has been said by Mr. Narayanan and his team on cost of quality, and must congratulate SSA for summarizing the subject most elegantly in such a short time. Narayanan ji brought the whole history of quality, and he sort of positioned it to drive profitability and disruptive transformation. I would go a step further to say that it is based for survival, not to mention growth for your business. We looked, he summarized tools for operational efficiencies. Rather than just the quality, he incorporated all aspects of cost leakages and brought the whole subject into operational efficiency. He visited, the leaders or gurus of quality movement, which has happened probably in 1900 onwards. And we are also seeing that evolution, what has happened in Europe, America on the quality front. I think we are at just the beginning phase of that quality evolution in India. Having said that, I would like to share industry perspective on the subject. As you all know, we have grown in secured markets, and we have seen year-on-year growth just because we have a presence in the market. There was no need for us to deep dive into quality aspects of our products. And this has been generally true for most of the industries. The attitude was सब कुछ चलता है, चलता था or rather चलता है. This was the scene till about 2000. However, the first decade, we saw some changes happening, and in the current decade, I think we will evolve eventually to go more aggressively towards the right quality for the product. I'm sorry to say that even at the export front, one would have expected that the units would really be very, very quality conscious. They are in a way quality conscious. However, their competition is not based on the quality consciousness. The competition is happening because they are price competitive because of the low cost of labor, and somehow they could have done much better. And this is one of the reasons that if you look at our export basket in plastic products, it is limited to certain items where we have a inherent advantage because of the labor cost, and we are not graduated beyond that. So an average plastic processing unit does not have clarity in what quality means as of yet. However, if you look as a consumer, you must have realized in recent past that we used to get guarantee of 1 year on a car. Now it has extended to 2 years or maybe even more. Where does that extra guarantee come from? This actually is a reflection of the car companies in their quality, so that they are charging you something and giving you much more in terms of value for your money. So we are living in an era where in this decade you will see a global competition a norm, you will see standardization a norm. And if you accept this as a new normal, uh, time is now to act by looking at quality not as a cost but as a differentiator that can boost your marketability, build goodwill for you, your company, so that you can grow in future. Uh, Let us look at flip side. What can be implications of ignoring quality? And I draw from my own experience of industrial products, particularly in industrial plastics, to give some examples. And the one example which has a very very profound impression left on me was the mysterious fires in Tata Nano, and that has probably cost the Tatas the product life cycle for Nano. The development of Nano was too fast, and some design flaws were there where you wanted to get the car out, a very compact car at a very reduced cost. So there were a lot of plastic parts used under the hood. Unfortunately, the whole engine and the whole assembly was so cramped that there was no room for efficient heat dissipation from the engine, and that ignited fires in Tata Nanos. And eventually, what happened? It got a bad reputation. The sales dived, southwards, so much so that actually the engineers sat down and went back to replace some plastic parts back to metal parts, which was kind of an unheard of in the automotive industry as such. So this quality aspect of having overlooked this quality costed them a lot of money. Actually, it costed them a Nano as a brand, and a lot of reputation of Tata's got hurt. Another example is, one of the best companies in automotive is Toyota. They were perfect, and their quality was unparalleled, probably top in the world. But they also had an issue overlooked because some design flaw, that there was a small bush of plastic was used in their accelerator pedals, and due to temperature changes and some usage, it used to jam, and that caused a lot of accidents. uh, it, it it costed them very heavily. The brand took a lot of beating, and they had to recall millions of vehicles for such a small quality mistakes that went past through them. So, friends, the time has come that we as an industry should really embrace, uh, this aspects of, reducing our costs, increasing our profitability, increasing our goodwill in the market for long-term benefits by, taking up some of the learnings that was presented today. And one must remember that the quality issue remains alive long after the product has left your manufacturing plant. So think in depth and act on improving your quality on a continuous basis, because if you are competing in the global market, you will have to keep ahead of the competition so that you can really grow. Uh, and of course, as NC said about the advent of technologies, if you look at advent of technologies would not have been possible unless there has been a overall improvement on the quality. For example, just take the case of Maruti in India. When Maruti was introduced into Indian market, we were never used to that kind of quality, and as a result of Maruti's operation, the whole ecosystem changed to embrace better quality. And look, today what we have is world class cars coming out of Indian factories. So this is one example of a journey of maybe 20, 30 years which has evolved. And I'm hoping that this decade would be the decade of that quality change, so that we can meet the aspiration of Indian customers and compete globally. Thank you very much.
Excellent value add, Mr. Hiren. Really amazed by the way in which you have brought the examples to stress the point. So the focus is on one side is not improving profitability, but it's a question of survival. That is the key message, which is very, very valuable and very critical for Indian entrepreneurs. Thank you very much for your substantial value add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hiten Bhai, for a very valuable perspective and the case studies. I think these are very relevant to the industries today. I think you connected the dots very well and emphasized the very need of such programs for the industry. Thank you, Hiten Bhai, for your industry perspective. Sarfaraz, if we have some questions, you may go ahead asking them on behalf of the attendees.
So far, there have been no questions shared. However, for the benefit of the participants, most of the times we receive some questions. So I would like to ask these questions to the panelists. May I?
Yeah.
All right. So now these are the very common questions which people, the participant would benefit. So one of them is we are normally asked, what is there any additional capex that would be required for any improvement initiative, be it optimizing the quality or reducing, so this is something that I wanted to, on behalf of the participants, pose to the panelists. So is it any additional capex required for any improvement initiative? Yes, sir.
I think that's quite a very important question, almost asked in the most of the forum, because one of our perception and paradigm in the past has been that if you want to produce a better quality product, then it will be expensive. This is, I don't know from where this idea came from, but this is one of the myth carried age-old civilization. So because our understanding of quality really means is that I need to invest on some special equipments or processes and things like that for me to improve quality. In fact, when Philip Crosby brought this idea, quality is free, everybody raised their eyebrow when he brought this idea. What is quality is free means what? So for making I always used to give an example. To make a lousy biryani or excellent biryani, the efforts are the same. In fact, making a lousy biryani requires more effort than making a good quality biryani. So the ingredients are remaining the same, and it all depends on what kind of attitude with which we produce anything. So essentially, in fact, for making a poor quality product, it is expensive because, as Ganesh and Vijay has nicely explained, that the hidden factory, because early days when I was in automobile, the planning engineers used to build a rectification line. So I used to wonder, how can you make a rework line part of the manufacturing? That means you are 100% sure that you are not going to make things first time right. So making things first time right doesn't require any capital investment. It only requires attention to detail and finding the root causes for the defect, which can be systematically eliminated. At least in the last 21 years of my consulting more than thousands of companies, we have not spent a penny for getting a substantial financial benefits. For want of time, I'm not taking any specific examples. So quality is free, because I think that's a very important lesson.
All right, sir. Thank you. Also, one of the common questions we get is, what is the process that one could follow or SSA follows to identify the root cause? Because what the entrepreneur, the business owners, leaders, they feel may or may not be the problem. So, in brief, can you suggest how one could identify the root cause for what's going on for profit leakage or any customer complaint?
I would suggest Vijay to touch upon this. Vijay, we have been doing a lot of work, and Ganesh can supplement.
Sure.
Yeah. See, the most important part when we are taking this kind of the initiative is identifying the problem, because many times we are not very clear about what problem we are trying to solve. Yeah. The root cause comes the later. Now I'm currently, I'm facilitating a couple of the projects in one of the well-known organization in India. What I have seen, when we are trying to take any kind of the improvement projects, first of all, identifying the right project itself is the important part. I have seen the few projects, those are something kind of a just do kind of things. So that means, for example, if I have to establish a new market, now people are trying to take this kind of the project as an improvement project. Now it doesn't require any kind of the analysis and paralysis. Okay, for me to probably go and establish a new market, that means this is a strategic initiative. I have to really go create an action plan and then work on that. It doesn't require any root cause per se. What is important here? You need to identify the areas where you don't know why this is happening. If the things are going wrong, either we are not aware or we know something, but we are not pretty sure. Then that is where you are going to get into the root cause analysis. Now, when you say the root cause analysis, what does that mean? You are trying to basically touch the something which is really hurting your process. And we have a tendency to jump into the conclusion. I have seen many times, without identifying the reason why there is a failure, people comes with the solution itself. No, we have to really avoid jumping into the conclusion. There are different tools and techniques to reach into that, the root cause understanding analysis that can be done. So that's what I thought. I'll just share the high level thought process.
Yeah. So just to proceed now, another important question that people ask in the return on investment. So when one takes an improvement initiative, so how does the ROI can be gauged, especially in a manufacturing company like the plastic industry, or especially related to the cost of poor quality? How do we, when we do some improvement, how the ROI can be measured? Any thoughts on that? Because this is one of the biggest questions we are asked in forums.
So just out of the case studies that were presented quickly, I think my other panelist can substitute from the industry. I may request Mr. Hiren also to give some examples. Out of the many, recently one of the Oman cable manufacturing company wanted to bring down 500,000 Omani Riyal, which runs into more than 2 crores of saving. They said that unless otherwise we are going to improve the quality and bring down this cost, then we will have a survival problem. And about 8 to 10 improvement areas were identified systematically. And then without, improving the quality and then at the same time taking the fat out of the system was accomplished. So out of the various initiatives that were done in refineries or multivarious manufacturing companies, invariably in less than 1 year time, depending upon the size of the organization, of course, generally the amount of effort they may spend, they may get about 10 to 20 times their investment of time and efforts. They will be able to bring out the cost of poor quality.
All right, sir. All right. So you answered my second question, another question, which, the timeline for a particular initiative, where you mentioned that depending upon the size of the company, the time takes, but, if few months to a year, that could take to, show any improvement, right? So that was one of again one common question that we are asked: the timeline for any initiative.
Generally about 6 months to 1 year,
6 months to 1 year.
you can bring about a substantial savings out of these improvements.
All right, sir. So I believe this information would be on the mind of the participants, which they normally do. And with this, I would also like to take the opportunity to announce to all the participants, to all the attendees, that we, in association with IPMA, will be bringing out several programs, training programs, to begin with, which are in line with the webinars that we had discussed today. The topics on profit leadership, how to identify profit leakages, and what are the tools that are required you to learn for you be able to do that. Then we talked about inventory optimization. So we do some kind of workshops on the same, how you can get the perspective of DDMRP. And then we also, last but not the least, for the cost of poor quality, for the current programs where Mr. Vijay spoke in depth about Six Sigma. So we'll be running some Six Sigma programs with IPMA under the Center for Excellence initiative. So please stay tuned. The IPMA team will be notifying you on all these programs shortly. So I hope we get to work with you and have you as part of the participants. So Deepakji, that's all from our end.
So thank you, Sarfraz, for filling up the questions. On behalf of IPA, we would like to thank NC and his entire team, including Naveen, Ganesh, Vijay, for their excellent presentation. I think that all the sessions during the day have been really very good and very enlightening. And this is a platform where we can have a launch of such programs as we discussed with AMTech coming up. And so we will soon announce our programs along with SSA for the industry. I would also like to thank Mr. Hiten Beda. Hiten bhai, your presence has made a lot of difference, because the industry always want to also understand the industry perspective and the real industry experience. So having on the industry side, you have given the right perspective and the need of such tools and techniques to be deployed in the industry. Hiten bhai, thank you very much for being with us for this entire duration of the program, and thank you very much. Once again, I would like to thank all the attendees, the participants who have attended this program. If there are any questions, if you want to ask even after this, you can post it on the platform, on the exhibition platform. You can also send it to us through mail. We will be more than willing or eager to reply to you. We will contact the experts and individually send you the response. Having said that, we will come back to you with our concrete plan, calendar of various programs, which we are going to launch very soon. So once again, thank you everyone. Thank you all my panelists, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Deepak,
you.
for
Thank you.
organizing the program. Take
Thank
care.
you.